Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Millennial Smark, and I'm back at it again with another video. I like this format. Upload really early in the morning time, and if I feel like it, upload really late at nighttime. And by like it, I mean like there's another video that I feel like putting out, or if there's just a standard review that I'm doing. And no longer uploading unless something really crazy happens in the evening time. Save like 12 to 16 hours for working and for chilling at my house and, you know, doing the family man thing, and you upload only one time a day, or if you feel like doing it twice, you get it in really early portions in the morning time when everybody's asleep, or in the really late night portions when everybody is asleep. I like this format a hell of a lot better, and I'm doing it right now. So let's talk about this real quick. I seen this post and it just caught my attention. It was on Reddit, right? And you know, this is what Millennial Smart was all about back in the days, you know what I mean? Like the whole channel when I was doing the whole Devontae Rackley thing was more so yelling and screaming and singling out people and specifically going over and over about a company, where in reality this is a professional wrestling problem. Now, to be fair, I think AEW is the biggest contributors, but let's do a catch-all and talk about the culture of professional wrestling in general, like I used to do for the Millennial Smart channel, when dissecting and really pinpointing the actual problems and kind of filtering out most of the jokes to really hit home, because that's what they want, right? They don't like the actual jokes in itself, then cool. Let's focus and pinpoint on the ideology in itself, and let's take out some of these people's arguments the best way we can. Toxic masculinity. I made a video probably like a week or two ago discussing this to a lesser degree when I said that Tony Khan hates men. But is it really a Tony Khan problem as a whole? What I mean by that is it really just the small men that are being built up because that's who Tony Khan, for an example, wants to relate to? Because honestly, I'm starting to see that a lot throughout professional wrestling in regards to how the big men are being treated. Now, granted, you have situations where they make the booking make sense. You know what I mean? I mean, take Obafemi for an example in this match against Tony D'Angelo a couple of days ago. Tony D'Angelo is smaller than Obafemi, but they at least made it a point to have multiple wrestlers jump, blatantly jump Obafemi and put him at a disadvantage, because it was pretty much 1 versus 3.5 if you include, you know, Rizzo getting involved, right? And they did everything in their power to make Obafemi still look as masculine as humanly possible without sacrificing the obvious common sense that Obafemi would probably theoretically destroy Tony D'Angelo in real life, right? But that's not always the case in professional wrestling. You see, I have this term. It's called the Gargano Priest effect. I coined it that because there was a couple of matches that Damian Priest was having with Johnny Gargano back in NXT a couple of years ago, where it didn't even matter the size of Damian Priest with how many times he was selling moves from Johnny, and it really bugged the hell out of me. In fact, he still does it to this very day. I see him sell for guys like Finn Balor. I see him sell for guys like JD McDonough. You know, I just don't see the reasoning behind being that size and having to deliberately sell for your opponent in the manner of how Damian Priest sells for his opponent. I'm not saying don't sell for the smaller guy. Look at Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. That is by far the most perfect. You can't find a better example of how a small guy works with a big guy. outside of the closest thing is maybe Chris Benoit and Brock Lesnar. Those two matches are the epitome of how you should be able to work a match as a small guy versus a big man. But nowadays, you don't really get that. Nowadays, the most masculine of masculine men, whether that's a gimmick, whether that's the actual portrayal of the superstar in regards to their size, they have to look weak. And I never really understood that in professional wrestling. Why do you deliberately have to make the man look weak against the smaller man? It just doesn't really compute with me. Like, who are we relating to by doing something like this? You know what I mean? Like, the whole point of a wrestler, at least for me and the people that I grew up upon, was very akin to how we looked at anime. Very akin to how you looked at American superheroes. It was supposed to be the larger than life aesthetic that conflated with the person in the ring that you strived to be. You knew at your age there was no way you were ever going to attain what they were currently doing at that moment. But for you to even strive for something like that and do it in a way that you knew that they weren't doing it, you were doing it in the healthy way, right? You don't know what the wrestlers did backstage in order to get that size, but you know that you can get towards that size and you're going to try your best, but obviously you're going to do it in the healthy way because you only know the healthy way. That was what professional wrestling was all about, aesthetically speaking, to young men. No different than superhero movies. No different than animes. And I just don't like the fact that professional wrestling nowadays, there's really nothing to work towards anymore. I think it's always been said that everything that happens in politics is going to be a downstream into culture, especially nowadays with social media being the thing, right? But I think when talking about professional wrestling, we never talk about the fact that politics being a downstream to culture, well, all that is still going to be a downstream to wrestling. Essentially meaning that politics is a downstream to wrestling. And I notice when I look at politics nowadays from a mainstream perspective, obviously look at the entertainment business and the entertainment industry as a whole, unfortunately is being taken over by the left. Mainstream popular things that are currently happening at the moment, whether that be music, whether that be television, whether that be movies, unfortunately they can't get out of their minds for some reason that wokeness is affecting it in every which way forward, especially the superhero movies. I've noticed that a lot. And it's just crazy to me how many times they go towards the woke avenue or the woke principles, and not only does it get negative review after negative review after negative review, it almost always bombs in the box office. I don't really believe in the whole go woke, go broke stuff, because I feel like there are way too many examples where that kind of contradicts that whole thing. I think if you're a big enough industry, it's a rare circumstance where something's going to actually happen to you. You know what I mean? I think more so it has to do with the fact that if you are a commodity, no matter what happens to you, you're going to be fine, especially if you're a monopoly, right? That only works on people when you don't really provide a legitimate alternative. Life can be lived without you. Then I feel that whole go woke, go broke thing, that actually does matter and that does mean something. But nevertheless, though, I look at how everything is currently going on in mainstream and seeing how all that stuff legitimately is having a downstream to professional wrestling. And it's not just looking at the men selling for smaller men. It's not noticing just specifically the physique of the normal wrestler going smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point that What was always the end all be all in regards to how low you can go to still look like a man in professional wrestling, and I've talked about this in the past, was a Shawn Michaels, was a Bret Hart. A Rey Mysterio was a rare anomaly, an extremely rare anomaly. And even then, Rey Mysterio still had the physique of a wrestler. He still wore a mask because he was a luchador. He's still compelled to the actual wrestling aesthetic and the image. It's just his size that was a problem. But he still had so much charisma, and he still was so incredibly innovative that it's okay. You can get away with Rey Mysterio. It's a one-time thing. Rey Mysterio-sized wrestlers are now running professional wrestling. And I can't help but think, does that have anything to do with the downstream culture of politics now infiltrating professional wrestling? The toxic masculinity that used to give professional wrestling its core value, and I say toxic in quotations, mind you, that's now starting to leave overall. You know, like, they tie all these things to the culture of professional wrestling whenever you hear road stories of how wrestlers used to get into fights, bar fights, they do this, they do that. And honestly, I used to think that kind of just put a little dirt on your chin, put a little dirt underneath your fingernails. I think when everybody played their positions and didn't try to be more than what they already were, that's when the world was ran a hell of a lot better. You know, I look at the 1950s and I look at those old television shows like, you know, like Leave It to Beaver and stuff like that. Or you look at like, you know, like just regular, strong foundation homes, you know, and you see like the dad, he's there typically in the forefront, you know what I mean? Or not in the forefront, but in the background, typically, with his arm around his wife and his hand in the middle, palming both of his children. You know, like you got a son, you got a daughter, you have the wife right there, and you have the husband with his hand around his family as if to say, this right here is my prized possession. This is right, this here, me, this is me. This is me. And notice how everybody playing their positions looks happy, looks normal, looks healthy. Typically is in a living room. It's in front of a nice photo that you know cost a pretty penny back in the days. It was just that imagery projected that I feel was only cultivated by the man and the woman playing their positions and being able to make that work. And professional wrestling can still be that way. Men and women playing their positions to make that work. But unfortunately, everybody wants to go for the number one spot. It can never be like the World Heavyweight Championship and the Universal Championship, where it's the number one spot for both brands, and both brands are working to make WWE better. I mean, unfortunately, maybe not to the degree of how you see it today, but take the whole fucking philosophy regarding that. You can extend it to the Ruthless Aggression era also, when, you know, Brock Lesnar was champion on one show and Triple H was champion on the other show. My point being is, you had 1, 2 working together to make this sole purpose a number one thing. But now everybody wants to go for the Universal Championship. Everybody wants to go for Cody Rhodes' championship belt. Never mind the fact that there is another championship belt out there. And maybe if you worked on making that belt as prestigious as Cody Rhodes' championship belt, then maybe, just maybe, you'll have more people going for 2 separate world championship belts, and it wouldn't feel like a complete and utter joke. To the extent that you're not even going to focus on that other championship belt, and you really want Cody Rhodes' championship belt. You know, that's how women are in professional wrestling nowadays. You can never strive to be the number one woman in your field, doing whatever you can to be the number one woman, and not number one based on strictly what the men are doing and currently are failing at right now, because what they want to focus on is the in-ring criteria to do their gymnastics routines. But you, over here, doing what you can to provide based off of what your gender, off of what your sex naturally provides, which is beauty, while the man is doing the masculinity. You see, people get offended when you say things like this. The left gets offended when you say things like this because they really believe in camaraderie overall in every aspect of life. Camaraderie is not a bad thing. Camaraderie is a beautiful thing, but it needs to be done effectively. To do it on every little single thing, all you're doing is taking away from how a thing could have been done more effectively if you actually had the biological sex that, typically pertaining to that situation would make it a lot easier. I know you've seen these videos on these police arrest videos and these crazy situations happening, and you ask yourself, especially as a citizen, how safe do you feel having a woman police officer come to a scene of a crime? Or how safe do you feel calling a woman police officer to a call in order to help you out? I think personally, if I was in a situation, I absolutely want multiple men to come help me. I do not want a woman police officer to come help me. That's not saying that it's sexist. It's just to suggest that I know my chances of living or not being hurt drastically goes up if I have a male police officer there versus a woman. I don't give a shit how trained a woman is. The best woman police officer in the world most likely can't even compete with the worst police officer in the world. More or less, that's just biologic. That's just biology as a whole. You know what I mean? And I look at that when having to talk about professional wrestling, because it's not to suggest that we can't have women police officers. It's not to suggest that women police officers can't be a thing, but it is to suggest typically, not all the time, but typically, women police officers, they kind of soften a situation whenever having to deal with criminals. Obviously, you're going to want a woman police officer to pat down another woman criminal just to pretty much get away from anything that could hurt the case by the woman suggesting that she was sexually exploited or whatever the case may be, right? There are reasons to have women on the police force, but those reasons don't have to bleed into the core aspect of being a police officer or police activity. They have their roles. They can play their roles. They can absolutely come on a scene of a crime or whatever when there's 3 or 4 male officers there to calm down the situation. Or as I said beforehand, if there's a female involved, she could be the one to actually have to, go up towards that situation. But when you have a dangerous criminal shooting a gun, no, I don't want a female officer there. And the same thing can be said about professional wrestling. Women do have their places in wrestling. I don't know why this is a bad thing to say. I don't know why that's a bad thing to even suggest. They have a place in professional wrestling, but it's not what the men do. It's simply not. Wrestling is a male soap opera. In the end of the day, that's it. It's a male soap opera. The women cannot do what the man can do. That's just that. Now, if they want to have their own promotion, like Shimmer or Stardom, then be my guest. Segregate yourself as you wish. But notice, and this is nothing against Shimmer or Stardom or anything like that. I'm not picking on them. They have their audience that wants to watch that. But there's a reason. There is a strong, strong reason why, for the most part, I don't think anyone has ever. When was the last that has Shimmer ever, or Stardom for that matter, any of those companies, with all due respect to them, have they ever filled out a 10,000 seat venue? Ever? Period. Point blank. Have they ever done that? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Have they ever done anything that crazy in numbers? Analytics? Does anyone really give a shit about Shimmer or Stardom? And they've been around forever. Not one time? Not once? Have they ever gotten anything over 10,000? Audience? Views live? Maybe? I guess? I don't know. My point being is, though, there's a reason why they're an insane niche. It's not to say that there's anything wrong with them. It's just to say that it wouldn't work on the grand scheme of things. No one wants to see an all wrestling promotion ran by women. because women, they just athletically, mostly for the most part, can't do what the man can do. It's just that simple. And even for the ones who are super athletic, who are legendary, they're just not as charismatic as the men, typically speaking. Take Manami Toyota for an example, right? Kyoko Inoi. You could take any of those women back in the 1990s for an example. Great women wrestlers. Manami Toyota is probably the most influential women's wrestler in the history of the business, and it's not even fucking close. Great wrestler. Probably a better wrestler in ring at that point in time compared to the male counterparts, right? But that's athletically speaking. I'm not talking about the wrestling overall. I'm not talking about what made wrestling actually appeal to their given audience at that point in time. She didn't do that. Taking one aspect of professional wrestling and pretending that one aspect of professional wrestling is supposed to be the dominating feature of it, and therefore, well, golly gee willikers, that makes her the best, period, point blank, is stupid. I said this once and I'll say it again. When you're in high school, you don't pass language arts and fail every other course and think that you're going to graduate high school. That's not how that works. You have to graduate, you have to pass everything. And even in that same context, you don't get an A in one and get an F in everything else. I think you're smart just because you got an A in one. That's just simply not how it works. Let's face facts. Women, we should get back into doing bra and panty matches. It's not to suggest that they can't wrestle. We should get back into doing that. We should. I don't see why. Why is that a problem? Why is that a problem? Ask a woman if she wants to do it. If she doesn't want to do it, then that's just it. That's it. Why is that such a problem? There are women who do want to do bra and panty matches. There are women who do want to do mud matches. There are women who do want to show off their bodies. And I don't want to hear anything from any of these stupid people from the left who have a problem whenever you do or suggest things like this. These are the same people who, if you were to go around and say, hey, maybe not wear a short skirt when walking in the middle of night by yourself to go to a club. And then they say, how about you teach men to don't rape? Okay, I get that. But I'm telling you, you should not do that to lower your chances. I can tell men all day that you guys shouldn't rape, you guys shouldn't rape, you guys shouldn't. You got mental cases out there who are still gonna do it. Although this can be prevented. I'm telling you outright, this can be prevented if you don't do this thing. Why are you still doing this thing? Men that rape are gross, but I don't know how they look like. I can't spot them. I can't see them. I can, however, see you. And we can kind of stop this if you don't do this. And then you say I'm slut shaming. So you want to look like that. So, okay, if that's the case, then, okay, well, I'm just keeping it consistent. I mean, what is it in the end of the day? Is it slut shaming when I tell you, hey, maybe dress a little bit conservative so you don't attract men who are batshit crazy? Is it slut shaming then? Or am I just going to give in to what you want and then you call me a pervert over it? It's dumb. It's really, really, really dumb. That's what I'm saying as far as politics from the left bleeding and infiltrating professional wrestling from an entertainment standpoint. And it's not to say that leftists don't have good qualities like empathy, for an example, that can't be done in politics. It's just to suggest that their grip on the entertainment industry, as far as the equality argument that they just want to and not even, it's equity now, right? It's no longer equality. Equality is equal opportunity. Equity is, like, hey, you have a car and it works fine, and I have a car and it's not working fine. Yet we have the same job and we make the same amount of money, but you made different decisions, hence why your car eventually broke down and my car happens to still be good, even though my car originally didn't look as cool as your car. Equality is we both have the opportunity to get a car and you chose a crappy car when I chose the good car. Equity is, can you break your fucking car to make it as bad as my car currently is right now so we both have crappy cars? No! I'm not down for that. I'm not down for equity in professional wrestling. I'm not down for feminizing professional wrestling in order to make, I don't know, the men and the woman now on par with each other. Because you notice more and more and more, it's becoming more and more obvious that's what they're currently doing at the moment. Every single day we go through the world, it's so obvious that they're feminizing men. And with that, they're feminizing professional wrestling as a whole. And they sit back and they call you a crazy person and they gaslight you. That's what they do. They gaslight you by taking things that are clearly in your face and they're going, ha 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 ha. We do not see this. What do you mean? Ha 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 ha. Or, my favorite, completely ignoring the situation and just spewing ad hominems and insults to you and calling you a crazy person because you notice. Always say that to yourself in professional wrestling. Always understand that the worst thing that you can do currently at the moment, whether it's in professional wrestling or the culture as a whole, is noticing. Stop noticing. Stop using your eyes. The more and more you use your eyes, the more and more you put yourself into a position. You put yourself into a position where you get ridiculed for doing such a thing. Again, I'm not suggesting that women in the sport can't contribute to anything. I'm not suggesting that everybody has to look like a Hulk Hogan. But what I am suggesting is that professional wrestling has a certain aesthetic tied to it. And I come to professional wrestling to see one thing, and to get a caricature of what it used to be happens to be a problem. And to know that all of it is happening, and the reason behind it happening is because of the outcome of equity, to have the men and the women on par in every which way forth, to the extent that you have guys twice the size of women wrestling on the indie circuit and getting demolished, and us having to say that, well, it's fake, without even understanding the optics behind what we're seeing right now at the moment. Wrestling is being feminized. And that's the thing that we should probably talk about and maybe go forward as far as trying to rectify that situation. But that's just my opinion. I'm going to leave it up to you guys in the comment section below. This video went on long enough, and I will be back later on tonight for the NXT review. And as always, my name is Millennial Smart. I'll be catching you guys later. Deuces. P. Ice.